Welcome back to the Castos YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about purchasing or selling a podcast. Here at Castos, we recently purchased a new podcast for ourselves. It's called 3 Clips. If you listen to our audience podcast, you might have heard that gone out in the podcasting airwaves today. 3 Clips is a show hosted by Jay Acunzo, still will be hosted by Jay Acunzo. We purchased the rights to 3 Clips to own it, to distribute it, and we pay Jay and his production team to continue put out some great quality content. And I want to dissect this from a couple different angles, from you as a podcaster and what you might do to prepare yourself to sell a show, and why we did it, what the value is for us, a podcast hosting company, to own yet another podcast. From the surface level, we have a podcast ourselves that drives tons of traffic to our podcasting hosting service, to this YouTube channel. It's called The Audience Podcast. Up on screen, you can see the article from our 3 Clips announcement. We've embedded our recent podcast episode from today. And the Audience Podcast is something that I primarily host along with the owner of Castos, Craig, where we talk all about podcasting. It's much more of the 101 landscape of podcasting, how to start a podcast, tools, tips, tricks, that kind of thing. And then cast a wider net of success for a podcasting show, or a podcaster show, things like content marketing, video production, YouTube, blogging, all that stuff, everything that connects the dots to marketing and the overall success of a podcast. And then we bring on guests and we do the typical interview style of folks who have successful shows or folks who are just starting out a podcast to get the insight of how they're doing it. 3 Clips is a step above that. Let me pull that up on screen. So what Jay has done with 3 Clips is really dive deep into the podcaster's mindset, right? Really going deep on storytelling, narrative podcast creation, how to be a better interviewer, really getting into the nitty-gritty of putting out amazing content. So it's a step up from the Audience Podcast. And largely why we acquired this podcast was, one, because it was available to, based on some negotiations and some discussions we had with Jay, but it really fit in well with what we were already offering. So the 101 content, the starter content that Audience puts out and that we put out here on the YouTube channel, is great for new podcasters, but eventually podcasters become old podcasters and they have hundreds of episodes and they need advice, they need content that's going to bring them to that next level, beyond where maybe the Audience Podcast is focused. So 3 Clips is really great for that kind of scenario. The premise of 3 Clips, I should say, is that of the name. It's 3 Clips. Jay will bring on a guest of a very popular podcast, or he'll just pull down very popular podcast episodes, break them into 3 clips, and analyze how they did that, how they approached it, how they came up with the questions, how they transitioned from something very crucial and critical to something fun and lighthearted. Really diving deep into the premise of other podcasts. 3 Clips. It's an amazing show for that kind of critical thinking around podcasting. The thing is with 3 Clips, and now if you're a podcaster saying, well, how do I sell my podcast to somebody like Castos or somebody else? The great thing with 3 Clips is, one, Jay is very articulate and has been in podcasting for a while, which means he has built up a lot of trust. So it wasn't really much about 3 Clips itself, like the technicality of 3 Clips and how it's produced and how it's put together. It is great. He has a production team, like I mentioned. They came over to Castos. But it's not just about that. It's that he's built up trust in the market of podcasters who really want to take podcasting to the next level. So when you're looking at, well, what am I doing with my show? It's not about the download count or even the technical production of the podcast, but that the 3 Clips brand associated with Jay, the branding is very strong. There's a trusted audience there. It doesn't need to be tens of thousands of people. It could be just a few thousand people. And that's valuable enough for us, for us in a marketing perspective. Like, how do we get the name out there? How do we bring Castos to that next level of podcaster crowd? But also, well, technically it does fit in well to be that next step above the Audience Podcast. And number 2, Jay, as I forget if it's number 2 or number 7 that I'm on. Number 2, Jay has a mission with 3 Clips. So it's not just, how do I just keep putting out this show? How do I make a template for this? How do I improve the workflow of it? Jay's really trying to push and bring Three Clips to the next level, constantly pushing the creative angle. So there's something that we really like about that. It's not just, hey, bring over another sort of, templated podcast. We'll just slot it into our marketing efforts. We dust our hands off and off we go. We're really here to be partners with Jay and to learn from Jay at the same time. Like, give him the resources that he and his team needs for Three Clips, to learn to see how he goes and produces this stuff, but also to support that mission of a creator. There's tons of stuff happening in the podcasting space right now. Billion-dollar companies like Spotify and Facebook going after trillion-dollar companies like Apple to really own or claim ownership of the podcasting space. We're not that large. We're not that big. We're creators ourselves. I'm a podcaster, a creator. Lots of people who work at Castos are podcasters and creators, and we want to support that message. So while everyone is watching these titans of billion and trillion dollar industries try to own that, we're trying to say, hey, we support the creators. We support the RSS feed. We support owning your own content and being able to be portable with it and do what you want with it. Maybe even earn a living from it, like Jay has with Three Clips. Okay, that's all I wanted to talk about today. We bought a new podcast called Three Clips. Hope you enjoy it. Definitely subscribe to it. threeclipspodcast.com. Listen to the audience podcast, castos.com/audience. Thumbs up if you like the video. If you have any questions about creating a podcast for sale or learning how to sell and market the podcast, put your questions in the comments below. Okay, we'll see you in the next video.